This video contains depictions of fictional video game violence, gore, and mild sexual content. Discussed are the subjects of childhood abuse and violence, as well as drug use and harm to children. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence or abuse, please check the description for resources that may be able to provide support. Thank you. In any story, the best antagonists are provocative. They tug at our heartstrings with emotionally charged backstories, and they wax poetic about their perspectives in compelling and occasionally convincing moral lectures. With game narratives specifically, a worthy antagonist for the player is arguably the most important element of the story. Strip nearly any game down to its writing, and you find a story that mirrors more traditional forms of fiction, the struggle between fear and desire, what we are trying to prevent versus what we want. As I touched on in my video discussing Coil, the Outlast series is phenomenal in its understanding of this narrative struggle. In horror stories more than any other, the backbone of the story is the antagonist, or in this case, the cast of them. Today, I'd like to dissect another prime asset through this narrative lens. We've bailed out of the jailhouse and are breaking into the orphanage to meet the mother of the reagents herself. Grab your rigs, pop your prescriptions, and get your bandages ready, reagent, because today we're talking about Mother Gooseberry.
Don't you upset Daddy?
But before we jump in, I'd like to take a moment to thank you for the kind words and thoughtful discussions about our last video. Video essays are a new thing for me, and it was through Jules's relentless encouragement and support that I sank the time into scripting, recording, and editing that first one. I learned a lot about the process, and it is my hope that I can improve my craft as I release more of these videos in the future. It feels corny to say that nothing I've ever released into the wild has gotten the breadth of attention as the Coil video has, but it's true, and I'm deeply humbled by the warm reception the video received, flaws and all. If you're new around here, hi, I'm Ori, one half of the ISV Hermes stream duo. I'm a fiction enthusiast and lifelong writer, and my greatest passion in life is breaking down the writing behind popular media to educate others on how to improve their own writing. If you like this sort of thing, stop by the stream over on Twitch to talk writing and partake in the live talks surrounding my narrative analysis. We'd love to have you. Okay, let's dig into today's discussion. To understand Mother Gooseberry, let's start by digging through the origins of her character. Our knowledge of Phyllis Futterman, aka Mother Gooseberry, places her in Philadelphia in her youth, where she lived with her father, Dr. Futterman, who was a successful dentist in the community. Her mother is out of the picture, though we're never told why. From a young age, Phyllis worked as his assistant in his dental clinic, where she kept young patients calm during procedures by using hand puppets. She was very engaged with musical theater and taxidermy, something which, combined with her family's popularity within their locale, later led to the formation of Futterland Studios, a children's entertainment studio. In 1951, Gooseberry hosted a children's program known as the Mother Gooseberry Hour. Things on the surface seemed to be going well for young Phyllis, as both she and her program were very popular. But after her father's death, the cause of which is still unconfirmed, Phyllis suffered a deep hysteria and lapsed into dissociative episodes. The Mother Gooseberry Hour continued, but it swiftly took a dark turn. She used her platform and mail-order dental drops business to persuade children to commit violent acts and become addicted to narcotics. If you're familiar with the history of medicine, it makes sense given the prevalence of various narcotics such as diacetylmorphine or heroin and opium within medications during this period. According to a paper published by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, the use of heroin in medicine globally for pain relief had reduced by 1950, but it's likely the practice was still ongoing in niche use cases like Futterman's dental drops. This is fiction, after all. Over the years of watching Gooseberry on television, children became erratic and noticeably cult-like, and often engaged in drug use, larceny, and in some cases, assault. The combination of her commanding persona and drugs made her an influential figure, especially for children, whose minds are the softest when it comes to persuasion. Seeking to squash this rising trend, local police raided Futterland Studios in 1955 and arrested Gooseberry, later charging her with racketeering, kidnapping, and conspiracy to commit murder. But Phyllis didn't go without a fight, and by the time the raid was concluded, 2 police officers had been killed and 5 others had been injured, as Phyllis had led them into an ambush in the tunnels under the studio and attacked them with dental drills. Though the narrative team at Red Barrels hasn't explicitly stated what police officers found at Futterland Studios, we do have a quote from a police captain on the case who said that the contents of the studios were the most grotesque architectural perversion since H.H. Holmes's Chicago murder castle. If you aren't familiar, H.H. Holmes was an American con man and convicted murderer, widely considered to be the United States' first serial killer. Notoriously, he had constructed a complicated and seemingly nonsensical hotel in Chicago, the aforementioned Murder Castle, that he supposedly used to lure visitors who were attending the World's Columbian Exposition in 1893. Though there is no evidence actually linking Holmes's hotel to his string of murders, the sensationalist journalism of the period inflated his gruesome killings and as such greatly exaggerated the structure itself. There were claims of torture chambers, trapdoors, gas chambers, and even rumors of a crematorium in the basement to dispose of bodies. None of these sensationalized claims was actually true, but it would make sense why the police captain would take them as fact, given the news coverage of the castle at the time. Having this context, we're able to piece together what exactly the police stumbled into when they raided Futterland Studios. A confusing nightmare of traps, gore, and, given the charges brought against Phyllis, likely even children who had been lured to her by her influence. After her arrest, Phyllis was sent to Holmesburg Prison, where, under the care of Dr. Kilgman, she underwent dermatological experiments. Here we see Red Barrels blending fiction with reality again, as Kilgman was a real doctor who conducted unethical experiments on human patients at Holmesburg. He exposed human patients to pathogens and dioxin, which most often cause chloracne, a very serious skin disease. In Phyllis's case, she was exposed to both dioxin and carbonic acid and even received skin grafts of dead tissue. Despite the seriousness of these experiments, Phyllis survived, with her overall health being remarkably good. Clyde Perry, our beloved Murkoff agent, was sent to interview Phyllis in 1956, as Murkoff had been following her story given the cult of personality and influence she had developed. It's likely there would have been some news coverage of the raid on Futterland Studios, so Murkoff becoming aware of her really is no surprise. During the interview, Phyllis actually attacked Perry, but after being restrained, she expressed interest in Signala, claiming that she would like a change of scenery. Perry noted that despite her gruesome appearance, she had the charisma needed for Project Lathe and had even managed 2 carnal relations with guards at the prison, as well as bringing other inmates and staff beneath her charm. It was during this interview that Perry encountered Phyllis's alters, or personalities, that would emerge when she lapsed into dissociation. Dr. Futterman, a mockery of her deceased father, was the primary one he met alongside Phyllis's Mother Gooseberry television persona, which seemed to be integrated into her actual personality. Clyde noted that Dr. Futterman is abusive and bigoted, but funny, so he liked them. Phyllis had constructed Futterman, a goose hand puppet, from scraps she was able to obtain while incarcerated, likely indicating she has some kind of mechanical proficiency. Perry also notes that both personalities on display include lapses into a simple-minded, or lizard-brained, as he puts it, murderous rage monster. It's important to note here that Red Barrels, at least to my knowledge, has never specifically claimed Gooseberry suffers from DID, or dissociative identity disorder. Though this is the popular belief held by the fandom and community at large, I think she falls much more on the side of a less specific dissociative disorder. I'm not a psychiatrist, so take my opinion with a grain of salt, but given that the personalities are active simultaneously rather than independently, and with no lapse of awareness between them, she does not appear to meet the diagnostic requirements for DID specifically. Having established her backstory, let's dig into her appearance to see how that story translates physically. Her stature is more sturdy and overweight, and she wears somewhat dated clothes that more resemble a fairy tale character than women's fashion in this era. This aligns with her Gooseberry persona, giving her a modest, motherly appearance, fitting for a children's television host. Her skin is flaky and red, the remnants of damage from the experiments conducted on her. She has a mask stapled over her face, one that appears to be made of skin, which has makeup smudged across its features. The top of Gooseberry's head is bald, likely the effects of the experiments, but the sides of her head still have graying hair. Accompanying her is, of course, Dr. Futterman. Where he was made of scraps before, he's been upgraded. Worn on Gooseberry's right hand, Dr. Futterman is made of some kind of leather, white feathers, and has bulbous red eyes. He wears a little top hat and bow tie, giving him the most dapper fairy tale appearance. But where most geese have keratin beaks, Futterman has metal and a whole denture set with gums. And as every reagent knows, within that cursed mouth of his lurks a retractable power drill, just itching for a skull to bore into. I really adore Gooseberry's visual design. She has so many elements that create a unique and distinctive form, each of which plays some integral role in understanding her as a character. Her design is visual storytelling done well. Further, the damage to her skin and grotesque mask contrast the costume she wears, a balance of how she sees herself versus how the reagents see her. We see the persona she wields through her clothing, the maternal costume of a woman who would be the matriarch of a household, convent, or perform for children. Her attire lacks scandal or edge and portrays a sense of modesty. Compare her to Aurora Cress, who's draped in more high-fashion luxury, or Lilia Bogomolova in her more provocative and ornate bodysuit camouflage, and Gooseberry's role in the familial hierarchy of the prime assets is immediately apparent. She's our mother, or at least she wants to be, and this is the role Easterman has given her as well. This is also made clear by the interactions between her and the player. When she isn't enchanting us with her singing, Lucinda Davis's voice is incredible, by the way. She's speaking gently to the reagents, welcoming them in, luring them closer. At times, it seems like she may think she is actually helping the player, likely the same delusional perversion of reality that led her to believe she was helping the children she once got addicted to drugs. Butting against this nurturing persona is Dr. Futterman, who is more than happy to verbally berate her and make threats to kill the reagents himself. In Gooseberry's world, it seems like everyone is welcome, everyone is loved, and everyone is to be nurtured, but Dr. Futterman is very swift to shut that delusion down.
I'm gonna drill yours ugly face to soups! Found them and drowned them. Daddy wants a snack.
Given that the Futterman puppet and persona are Phyllis's projections of her father, we can gather a lot about Phyllis's relationship with him before his death. It's never really explicitly stated what he died from, but the running theory is a mixture of drugs and alcohol. There's no doubt that he was abusive to Phyllis, likely from a young age, and while we have no way of confirming how physical the abuse may have been, it is very clear that he was very emotionally and verbally abusive to his daughter based on their interactions. The memory of her father's abusive nature and behavior is what Phyllis projects and assigns to the puppet, rather than something more healthy and nurturing. Futterman also berates, belittles, and insults Gooseberry constantly, going as far as to call her a fat cow, a bitch, and more. It's also interesting the way that Gooseberry inflects his voice, frequently adding extra S's in places you wouldn't typically find them. I think this is something of an attempt to mimic slurred, intoxicated speech, which builds on our theory that Futterman was an abusive drunk.
The fuck you think I am? Some kind of puppet? You pull my string? You could have been at nurses, somebody's wife's, but no, you had to get on the TV. You had to be a big star.
The Futterman projection also demonstrates a lot of very protective and possessive behaviors towards Phyllis, especially where other masculine figures are concerned. During prime time, we were treated to new dialogue from the prime assets discussing each other. Phyllis is absolutely smitten with Coyle, while Futterman's reaction to these behaviors is to deride her for her lust and threaten violence if Coyle were to ever lay a hand on her.
Would you stop visiting, for God's sake?
I'm just trying to fix my face, Daddy.
Since when did you care about... Oh my God. This is about that fucking cop, isn't it, you great slatternly slut?
What do you think his eyes look like behind those glasses?
Oh my God, Phyllis, dry your knickers out. There's children present.
Daddy, that police officer was leering at me and stroking his nightstick. What do you think he wants?
I think he wants to shoot my daughter. And if he so much as looks at you, I'm gonna drill his jaw out the back of his neck.
Oh, Dr. Daddy, you do care.
Observing patterns of behavior from real-world cases of abuse, it's not uncommon for the victims of childhood abuse from either parental figure to be drawn to similar behaviors and abuse from potential partners. It's a paradoxical safety net, and depending on how early the abuse is experienced, it can change the dependence and seeking behavior for those specific abusive traits. Coyle demonstrates deep misogynistic and controlling behaviors toward Gooseberry, but she finds him attractive nonetheless, which clues us in to how her father may have treated her when she was young. A character like Gooseberry is exceptionally fun to analyze because of how complex and multifaceted she is. Her story, the reason she is the way we encounter her, isn't ever explicitly given to us, but it can be pieced together through her interactions and design. And with two very distinctive characters meshed together to work as one, in this case Phyllis and Dr. Futterman, we're able to glimpse back in time to see how her childhood may have played out. Red Barrels really understand how to craft a complex and appealing villain, taking reality and blending it with the gruesome fictional elements that make the world of Outlast so compelling. Gooseberry, the mother in the hierarchy of Signala, is not just a cruel, twisted hedonist who revels in violence and bloodshed. She is a complicated, traumatized woman who was abused by her father, her sole provider and family. His death thrust her into a spiral of mental instability and unwellness, and given the time period, she went without support or treatment. Had the situation been any different, had Phyllis had another person to depend on for support after her father's death, it's very likely Mother Gooseberry, as we know her, would never have existed. Of all the prime assets, Mother Gooseberry stands out as more than a violent narcissistic psychopath. While she does demonstrate some of the same qualities that other primes do, at her core, she is a victim of abuse trapped inside her own mind, wandering dark, expansive halls without any light or hope of escape. Looking at the first two trial environments that Gooseberry was given at Signala, a common trait is unsurprisingly clear: children. Between Futterland, a take on a family theme park complete with carnival games and rides, and the Orphanage, the presence and importance of children in Gooseberry's character is obvious. As reagents, we're tasked with infiltrating both locations to either punish the children in the theme park who have been influenced by Gooseberry and are committing violence towards adults, or to cleanse the orphans of her influence by bringing them back into the Word of God.
This is probably going to work out great. Yep.
Not only is she positioned to provide shelter and safety for the children at the Sunshine Orphanage, but she's also been given the task of nurturing and raising them. Heading into the orphanage, the reagents are instructed to cleanse the mannequin children of Gooseberry's influence by reintroducing the rigid rites and structures of religion. While there is no mention of Catholicism and religion in Gooseberry's personal history as we know it, historically, Christianity was seen as a tool against communist influence, which was a great concern in the US at the time. We see Murkoff employing this within the trial at the orphanage by starting the children young into Christian practices, albeit with a sinister twist in the typical Murkoff Corporation style. Ascending the stairs and investigating the children's dorms, there are mannequins literally face-planting into piles of white powder, all while playing manic, feverish voice lines about how much fun they're having. That is, of course, until the nun mannequins come through the dorms and the children mannequins prostrate and begin to recite prayers. But when the coast is clear, they return to their naughty behavior. Further, in areas of the orphanage, we see more childish mannequins committing acts of violence on each other or on corpses, as well as nun mannequins partaking in some not so holy acts. This is not an environment for children, though at a glance, from the outside, it may appear to be. This is the entire point and a core foundational pillar of Mother Gooseberry as a character. Between her mask, motherly demeanor, and history as a children's show host, she should be a sanctuary and safety for children, but she's anything but. While she herself does not act violently toward the children, she does encourage them to behave violently and influences them both with the use of drugs and the charisma she wields, just like her life before Murkoff. She takes her charge over these mannequin children so seriously that upon trial completion, she flies into an inconsolable rage, howling at the reagents as she chases them that they've killed her babies, even though the players have not done anything physical to the mannequins themselves in this case. It's hard to listen to the performance because of how damn good it is, and it can be genuinely disturbing to listen to her sorrowful wails at the state of the orphanage as we slip into the shuttle to escape. At Futterland, the extent of Phyllis's influence over the children is brought to a head. We see mannequin children wielding drills in their hands, attacking the corpses of failed reagents and X-Pop who have come before, all while giggling and screaming with delight at the carnage they create. It's not what you would anticipate children taking delight in, and seeing children, or facsimiles of children in this case, put into this role is unsettling. Funnily enough, this was actually the first trial I ever played in the game. Imagine my shock at the gravity of that introduction. As a society, we associate children with innocence, whimsy, and joy, not bloodlust, barbarity, and malice. But in Phyllis's mind, this violence is the right thing. This is what children should be doing. Where the disconnect between reality and her delusion emerges is in that important break. Perhaps it's the result of her own childhood trauma surfacing in her delusion that has created a desire to mold other children into violent maniacs, arming them with the knowledge and experience to protect themselves from those who would try to harm them or remove them from her guardianship. Phyllis, in a way, still harbors a lot of resentment towards adults for what was done to her. She sees adults as threats to the safety and innocence of childhood, and in the midst of her derangement, she seeks to remedy this by any means necessary. In this case, it's by encouraging violent behavior from the children, which she leads by example. In the finale of Grind the Bad Apples, the reagents must push a ride car with the aforementioned violent mannequin children into a large grinder, which is nestled neatly within a structure built to resemble Dr. Futterman. In some ways, perhaps symbolic of the way Dr. Futterman's abuse may have literally devoured Phyllis's childhood. When the cart and its contents are completely shredded, Gooseberry emerges in a frenzy, once more screaming that her children have been killed. She seeks revenge for the mannequin's death and won't stop until the reagents are in the shuttle or dead. This loop, for someone as deep in the delusion of motherhood as Gooseberry, has to be unimaginably torturous, and all the while it reinforces her deepest fears, the ruin and harm of children. Where Coyle and Franco represent hypermasculine behavior as compensation for deep insecurity and trauma, Mother Gooseberry represents an escape into a fantasy world where she can control the outcome. This was outlined originally by Perry's observation that Phyllis's Mother Gooseberry TV persona had become entwined with her actual personality. Being Mother Gooseberry is an escape from the trauma and grief of Phyllis Futterman, and by never confronting those things, by reinforcing and doubling down, she is too far gone to be helped. She isn't serving a life sentence in Holmesburg prison anymore, but instead serving one far worse within Murkoff Corporation's carefully calculated playground. Phyllis could have been saved. Phyllis should have been saved. More than her father failed her, but the systems in place failed her, creating the monster that we see today. While much has improved in some parts of the US, People like Phyllis exist out there, victims of abuse and trauma going without support and help. Though she's a fictional character, she is still an echo of reality, and that is what makes her so gut wrenchingly tragic.